Hey everybody, welcome to the Leek. I'm John as always, and we are here to take a look at all the red cards today in Zendikar Rising from a limited perspective, of course. And we're going to start out with Akum Hellhound. Akum Hellhound is a single red mana for a creature elemental dog at common. It's an 0/1 with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, Akum Hellhound gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This is Step Links. This is literally Step Links, except it's red and it's a dog instead of a cat. It's elemental too. Step Links wasn't an elemental, I don't think. This card is in fact pretty frightening because it's common. You can get multiples of these. You drop them on turn 1 and surprise, you're attacking in with a 2/3 on turn 2 and turn 3 and turn 4. And if you get a second landfall trigger, it's even bigger. This card's quite scary. This card could be very good. If the format's fast, this card's gonna be nuts. If this card is nuts, it's gonna make the format fast. This is going to ruin best of one, and that's why you should never play best of one. This card is like probably just a B-. Probably just a B-, but of course you do need to be an aggro deck. You know, don't build like a blue-black control deck and splash this card. It's a very good card, and yeah, it will either define the format or be worthless. I'm going to start out at a B-. I suspect this is going to have some significant value in the format, and in best of one, you're going to get ruined by it. Don't play best of one. Up next is Akum Warrior. Akum Warrior is 5 and a red for a creature Minotaur Warrior at uncommon. It's a 4/5 with trample, but it's also a tapped mountain, so once again, we have a card that I'm never playing. I'm never playing Akum Warrior. But put a land on the back of it, I'm playing this 100% of the time. This is a card that you're probably going to play as a mountain quite a lot. Quite a lot. Because getting to 6 isn't something you're necessarily guaranteed to, especially if you are like a red-white warrior deck or something. So you're going to drop that mountain. But then, sometimes, you top deck this, you have 6 mana, you don't need a red source. Surprise! You have a 4/5 trample. This is an M34. That's going to be the rating that I give it. I've been doing that this whole time because this kind of defies ratings. You pick this highly, you play it 100% of the time. It's not really an A, it's not really a B, it's not really a C. It's some weird grade outside of the structure of the grading scale. Don't undervalue it. It's pretty ding-dang good. And you'll just always play it because it's free, essentially. Up next is Ardent Electromancer. Ardent Electromancer is 2 and a red for a creature human wizard at common. It's a 3/2. When Ardent Electromancer enters the battlefield, add red for each creature in your party. Ugh. At least it's a 3/2 for 3, so it's a C-. It's usually a C-, I would say, at a vanilla perspective here. It does technically cost 2 because you get a rebate of 1, but the 1 is only of value if you use it, right? If you cast this on turn 3 and you get that 1 mana rebate and you don't have a 1-drop, did this cost you 2 mana? No, it cost you 3 mana. So I think this is still just a C-. Anyways, this is a wizard, so it's going to be a little bit better than the blue-red wizards deck. You're going to play it a little bit more as like a C, but try to find better ways to trigger those wizard things. This is not a card you really want to go out of your way to play, so C-, C. Up next is Cinderclasm. Cinderclasm is 1 and a red for an instant at uncommon. It's got Kicker for a single red. Cinderclasm deals 1 damage to each creature. If it was kicked, it deals 2 damage to each creature instead. This is Pyroclasm, except you have to pay 1 more for it to be Pyroclasm, except sometimes you don't have to pay an extra point and still kill some things. As we looked up in the last set review, the black set review, there's 31 creatures with 1 toughness. That sounds like a lot. In fact, I'm going to do another check here. How many creatures are even in the format? Sorry, there's 32 with 1 toughness. In the format is 140 creatures. What about under rare? 96? And with toughness equaling 1, 24 of 96 common and uncommon creatures have 1 toughness. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And if we take a look at toughness being less than 3, that's 46. It's also instant. I think this card's pretty good. You obviously have to play around it. You know, don't put down all of your 1 and 2 toughness creatures and then cast this. You're going to get got. But I think this is great. I think I main deck this quite a bit. And instant speed is really good as well. I think this is like a B. I think it's like a B. Sometimes you'll side it out because turns out your opponent is like mono 3/3s. But yeah, I think this is like a B. I really like this card, which is weird. I don't usually like cards like that. Up next is Cleansing Wildfire. Really nice art here. Cleansing Wildfire is 1 and a red for a sorcery at common. Destroy target land. Its controller may search their library for a basic land card, put into the battlefield tapped, then shuffle their library, draw a card. I like when my Stone Rain. This doesn't Stone Rain. Your opponent gets the land. Like they get another copy of the land. And it draws a card. Technically it's fixing, I guess. Technically it's fixing. You can kill your own land and go and get your splash color and draw a card. maybe that enables like an Omnath deck or something. But oh boy. Oh boy, that's going to be the thing that people are going to be like, well, no, you do this. And I'm going to say, I don't care. I have this as like an F. I don't want this card. I don't want to play this card. There's better ways to do everything that you could ever want to do with this card than by playing this card. F. Up next is Expedition Champion. Expedition Champion is 2 and a red for a creature human warrior at common. It's a 2/3 Expedition Champion. Gets +2/+0 as long as you control another warrior. Very filler 2/3 for 3. And if you do have another warrior, which would presume that you're in like red-white warriors, it's a 4/3 for 3. Those are pretty good stats. So yeah, this is like a C+, assuming that you are going to turn this on. If you really don't have many other warriors, this is a C-. So C+, C-. Up next is Fireblade Charger. Fireblade Charger is a single red mana for a creature goblin warrior at uncommon. It's a 1/1. As long as Fireblade Charger is equipped, it has haste. When Fireblade Charger dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. This feels constructed-y. I don't really want to play a 1/1 haste for 1. As we've already talked about, there's a shockingly low amount of equipment in a set that apparently has a color combination that cares about equipment. Almost all of it's at rare or uncommon. I don't think this card's any good. I don't think this card's any good at all. I think you'll find better warriors for this. I think you'll find better creatures. I guess it's a Goblin Arsonist. Yeah, it's a hasty Goblin Arsonist, isn't it? And we just talked about there being a bunch of X1s. You know what? You did it. You did it, chat. It is a hasty Goblin Arsonist, and there are a lot of X1s. I did that thing where I read the cool part of the card.
How's the review going?
And I'm like, whoa, the cool part of the card, the equipped thing. Oh wait, it doesn't even have haste. It doesn't have haste. I have read this card very wrong. It doesn't even have haste unless it's equipped. Sure, it's a Goblin Arsonist. It's a Goblin Arsonist. It's a Goblin Arsonist. Yeah, this card's like a C. You'll put it in your deck. It'll be aggro. It'll ping off some 1/1s. That's about it. Up next is Fisher Wizard. Fisher Wizard. Is that a goblin? It looks kind of like a cat. It's a goblin. Fissure Wizard is 1 and a red for a creature goblin wizard at common. It's a 2/1. When Fissure Wizard enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So it's a piker that rummages. I don't think a piker that rummages is that good. It's a wizard, so if you do care about wizards, this is probably like a C, maybe even plus. And if you don't care about wizards, it's a C-. So C+, C-, really, really, really depends on your deck. Up next is Gomafada Vanguard. Gomafada Vanguard is 1 and a red for a creature human warrior at uncommon. She's a 2/2. Whenever Gomafada Vanguard attacks, target creature an opponent controls with power less than or equal to the number of warriors you control can't block this turn. So it's a bear. if you're red-white warriors, it's probably close to a goblin heel cutter. But, like, you're not going to make their 6/6 unable to block, probably. Because I doubt you're going to have 6 warriors kicking around. It's like a weak goblin heel cutter. It does only cost 2 mana. I think I'm really debating between C+ and B- here. It's definitely no lower than a C+. I just don't know if it's higher. It is a bear with an upside. Unfortunately, bears with upsides have kind of come down lately. Way back when, bears with upsides were always C+, bears were always Cs. These days, a vanilla bear is like a C-, and bears with a small upside are like a C. But I think this one can go up to C+. The relevant creature type does help out as well. Let's go C+ with Gomefada Vanguard. It would be great if you could get multiples of these, but they are uncommon, so you can only really expect one. Now, up next is Grotag Bugcatcher. That thing's catching a bug that's a lot bigger than it. Grotag Bugcatcher is 1 and a red for a creature goblin warrior at common. It's a 1/2 with trample. Whenever Grotag Bugcatcher gets +1/+0. Whenever Grotag Bugcatcher attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. For each creature in your party, it of course counts itself. So it's a 1/2 trample for 2. It attacks as a 2/2 trample for 2, and maybe you get it as a 3/2. Possibly a 4/2, probably not a 5/2. You can equip it up. Maybe you get counters because maybe you're black-red and you get incidental black counters. Maybe you're red-green and you get incidental green counters. It's fine. It's like a C. This is probably a C+. This is probably a bear with an upside that I'm just happy to play in red decks. It doesn't block, but if you're blocking in red, you're probably doing it wrong. C+ for Grotag Bugcatcher. Yay, more hard words to say. Up next is Grotag Night Runner. That's actually a little bit easier to say. 2 and a red for a creature goblin rogue at uncommon. It's a 2/3. Whenever Grotag Night Runner deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. So 2/3 for 3, rogue. So it's not fitting the blue-black rogue deck because it's red. It's not blue or black. But if it does hit the opponent, you get the red temporary draw effect, where if you don't cast or play the card, you just lose it forever. It's pretty filler. I don't quite know why it's uncommon. Maybe just because if you do reliably start hitting with this, that would be a lot of card advantage, and they don't really want you to have multiples of these. But I think this is a C+ at best. Yeah, I think it's a C+ at best. Up next is Inordinate Rage. Look at that angry moose. Inordinate Rage is 1 and a red for an instant at common. Target creature gets +3/+2 until end of turn. Scry 1. It's a combat trick. It's a combat trick that you can play if you have a spot, and if you don't, cut it. It's a C-. It's kind of the definition of a C- for me. Meh. Also, the art is bad. Up next is Kargan Intimidator. Kargan Intimidator is 1 and a red for a creature human warrior at rare. It's a 3/1. Cowards can't block warriors. Pay 1, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Kargan Intimidator gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Target creature becomes a coward until end of turn. Target warrior gains trample until end of turn. So it's a 3/1 for 2. I love that. I love that quite a bit. And for 1 mana, I can make a creature unable to block it. For 1 mana, I could give this trample, or I could give another warrior trample. And this has the Shade ability. +1/+1 for colorless mana? Oh, this card's really good. This card's really good. This is going to be the card that your aggro opponent's going to play on 2, and you're playing all those tap lands, and you're just like, oh, uh-oh. Yeah, this is like a B, maybe even a B+. I don't think it's a bomb. It's a single-time shade. Oh, you can only choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn, right? So it's not a shade constantly. It's just a shade once. So it's only a 4/2. We're going to keep this at a B then. But yeah, this is an aggro card that's just going to be terrifying. Like, absolutely terrifying. I've got this at a B, and yeah, best of 1. This blows best of one out of the water. Don't play best of one. Up next is Caswell's Fury. Caswell's Fury is 2 and a red for an instant with not Garrick in the art. It's an uncommon. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Caswell's Fury deals damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to any target. It's fling. It's fling and a land. At some point I'm going to get real tired of talking about this. It's not a great card, but because it's a land and takes a land slot, but also is an instant, you can play it as a mountain and randomly you kill your opponent by flinging a 6/6 at their face. I think this is... Oh, no, it's to any target. It's to any target. Yeah, this card's great. This card's great, not because either side of it is great, but because putting it together is great. You know, you play this early as a land, and if you top deck it late, you've got a lava axe sitting in your hand. Potentially, depending on what your creature base looks like. Yeah, so this is a grade that completely is outside of the realm of what the grade can be. So this is a... I'm running out of things to look at for a number. This is a phantasmal bear out of Dazzling Lights. That's the rating. It's a good card. Don't undervalue it. It's very good. All of these are very good. Almost all. There was that one that I decided I didn't like. Up next is Leyline Tyrant. Leyline Tyrant is 2 red for a creature dragon at Mythic. It's a 4/4 flyer. You don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. So this means that when you tap something for red mana, it just stays in your mana pool. For as long as this creature's alive, it just stays there. Carries over turns, just constantly builds up and up. You're charging up your lasers. When Leyline Tyrant dies, you may pay any amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to its target. It's a 4/4 flyer for 4 in red. That's fantastic. Then, any unspent red mana that you have at the end of like your opponent's turn, tap it and put it into the reserves. And then your opponent's going to start freaking out that they need to kill this creature. But if they kill it and you've pumped in, 4, 5, 6 mana, and you have red mana untapped when they kill it, you can tap that too. You just fireball them. This is terrifying. Unfortunately, exile removal will make you feel pretty bad, but you still had a 4/4 flyer for some number of turns. This is an A+. This is a great card. First pick in every pack. It's fantastic. It's very, 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 very good. Up next is Magmatic Channeler. Magmatic Channeler is 1 and a red for a creature, human, wizard at rare. It's a 1/3. As long as there are 4 or more instant and or sorcery cards in your graveyard, Magmatic Channeler gets +3/+1, becomes a 4/4 for 2. Tap, discard a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library, then choose one of them. You can play that card this turn. That's an interesting effect. 2 mana, 1/3. Those are always kind of okay when they do something else now, don't they? Late in the game, it's a 4/4 for 2, which is nutty. That's super, super efficient. Tap it to... What do you even call this? Tap it to like draw 2 and rummage one of the 2 that you drew, but then you must play the other one. Interesting. The trick, the real downside here is you probably don't really want to do this on your opponent's turn, right? Because you're not going to be able to cast any sorceries, you're not going to be able to cast any creatures, you're not going to be able to play any of the lands that you hit. So it's a little risky to do this on your opponent's turn, which means you're going to have to tap this on your turn, which means if it's a 4/4, you don't get to attack with it. There's a little bit fighting against itself here. But if you are blue-red spells, I think the fact that this is a 2/2 for 4, that maybe has some different value if you can't get in. Did I say 2/2 for 4? 2 drop for 4. Yeah, I think if you're blue-red spells and you're reasonably confident you'll get 4 spells into the graveyard, I think this card's like a B. If you're not, I think this card's still probably like a C+, B-. I think that value is just up there. I just wish it was value that I could get on my opponent's turn, but I don't really ever want to do this on my opponent's turn. So yeah, C+, B-, B. It's wishy-washy depending on your deck. Up next is Molten Blast. Molten Blast is 2 and a red for an instant at common. Choose one. Molten Blast deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Destroy target artifact. Yeah, we learned in Guilds of Ravnica that we'll pay 2 mana for a shock to creatures only. We'll do it. If we have to, we'll do it. And we'll do it. We'll do it. Sometimes we get to blow up an artifact. We're probably very rarely ever blowing up an artifact with that, but the fact that we don't have to sideboard in a card is very nice for this. We'll pay 3 mana for a shock, and we'll deal with the fact that we have to do that. It's like a C+, but only a C+. Up next is Morog, Fury of Akum. Morog is 4 red for a legendary creature Minotaur Warrior at Mythic. It's a 6/6. Each creature you control gets +1/+0 for each time it is attacked this turn. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, doesn't matter which, but if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. There's a little bit of weirdness going on here. First off, it's a 6/6 for 6 with... Was Orcish Oriflame +1/+0, or was that +2/+0? It's +1/+0. But there's a little bit of weirdness here. So if it's your first main phase, and you play a land, and you pass priority, you're going to go into your additional combat phase, and you attack. And then you're going to come back and do your regular combat phase, but creatures don't untap in your regular combat phase. So you need to play your lands in the second main phase. You need to attack with your creatures in your first combat. Go to second main, play your lands, then your creatures will untap for your next combat phase. Be aware of that. Don't play a land in the first main phase with a Morog, Fury of Akum on the battlefield if you plan on doing 2 attacks, because you're not going to get to do 2 attacks. You're going to get to do 1, and then all your creatures are going to be tapped for the next one. It's weird. But this card's great. It's absolutely fantastic. It's a vanilla test passer that pumps your team. +2/+0 the second attack. If you can get a second landfall trigger in the same turn, it's nutty. The card's an A+. I like it an absolute ton. Up next is Nahiri's Lithoforming. Nahiri's Lithoforming is X red for a sorcery at rare. Sacrifice X lands. For each land sacrificed this way, draw a card. You may play X additional lands this turn. Lands you control enter the battlefield tapped this turn. This is jank. This is jank. This is jank. Yes, if you somehow have a bunch of lands in your hand, I don't know where those came from, but you have a bunch of lands in your hand, and then you sacrifice a bunch of lands, and you draw a bunch of cards. You get to play all of those lands, and there you go. You got 5 landfall triggers for 6. This card's an F. It's an F. Play this in your jank commander, whatever, yada yada decks, but we're talking about limited. This is an F. Up next is Relic Robber. Relic Robber is 2 and a red for a creature goblin rogue at rare. It's a 2/2 with haste. Whenever Relic Robber deals combat damage to a player, that player creates an 0/1 colorless goblin construct artifact creature token with this creature can't block. And at the beginning of your upkeep, this creature deals 1 damage to you. So it's a 2/2 for 2/2 with haste for 3. That's okay stats. I've played 2/2s for 3 with haste and been kind of okay with them. If I get to hit my opponent, which I probably do the first time, right? They get an 0/1 creature that can't block and deals a damage to them every turn. If I get a second hit on them, they're losing 2 damage a turn, and they have probably no way of getting rid of these creatures. Like, they're probably not main decking Artifact Hate. They're probably not killing the 0/1 sitting on the battlefield. They can attack with it. I won't block their 0/1. So yeah, I think this card's pretty good. His name disconnects from the ability. If you read the flavor text, he says, "Here, you take it." The flavor here is the relic robber has stolen this idol and is like, "Oh crap, this idol sucks," and gives it to somebody else. And then I guess does it over and over and over and over and over and over and never learns. Yeah, I think this card's pretty good, except for the fact that you do have to be reliably hitting your opponent a lot, and I don't know if you're doing that more than like the first time. So this is around the C plus B minus range. If you're hitting your opponent repeatedly with this thing, you're already winning. If your 2/2 is reliably getting in, you're probably really far ahead. So this is just kind of win more. But at the floor, I think it's a C plus B minus. So C plus B minus for Relic Robber. Up next is Rockslide Sorcerer. Rockslide Sorcerer is 3 and a red for a creature, human, wizard at uncommon. It's a 3/3. Whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, Rockslide Sorcerer deals 1 damage to any target. Music to my ears. I wish it was common, but then this deck would probably be way too good. It's a 3/3 for 4, so it's already kind of, very filler level, but playable. But if you are blue-red and you are playing instant sorceries and wizards, just that extra point of damage on everything is a real nice ability. And if you do get 2 of these, you got a deck. This in the blue-red spells deck, I think, is like a B-ish? B-ish. I do wish it was 2 mana at common, like it was in Amonkhet, but it's not. B-ish in that deck. If you're not in that deck, it's much lower. Next up is Royal Eruption. Royal Eruption is 1 and a red for a sorcery at common. It's got kicker 5. Royal Eruption deals 3 damage to any target. If this spell was kicked, it deals 5 damage instead. You ever want to pay 7 mana for a Lava Axe? I mean, sometimes you have to. This is Lightning Strike or Searing Spear or Incinerate or etc., but sorcery, which kind of sucks a little bit. But we will play 3 damage for 2 mana, even if it is sorcery speed. This is like a B, I think. It's not going to be in the A range. It's not going to be B+. It's sorcery speed, but it is any target, which means it can go face. And if you find yourself late game, Lava Axe them. Overpay for it, but Lava Axe them. I'm a fan of winning the game when it's available to me, right? Yeah, the versatility on this card is just really nice. I think it's just a B. It'll be the first pick in some packs, but not being instant speed does make it a chunk below kind of where like Scorching Dragonfire would be. Up next is Roiling Vortex. Roiling Vortex is 1 and a red for an enchantment and a rare. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them. Whenever a player casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast that spell, Roiling Vortex deals 5 damage to that player. Pay a single red mana, your opponents can't gain life this turn. I don't think you're siding this in against the black-white life gain deck. Maybe, but I don't think so. I don't think people are casting spells for free in this format. And I don't think a 1 damage Sulfuric Vortex is enough for me. Sulfuric Vortex is nice because it's 2 damage a turn. And so if you're the aggro red deck, that is going to demolish your opponent very quickly. 1 damage a turn is not very much, so I do think this is just an F. I don't think I ever want to put this card in my deck. It has tons of constructed playability, but limited, no thanks. Up next is Scavenged Blade, one of our rare equipments, and at common too. Scavenged Blade is 1 and a red for an artifact equipment at common. When Scavenged Blade enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0. Equip for 2 and a red. If I have a spot, I guess. So like 2 mana for an aura that's +2/+0. And then equip cost of 3. Sure. I think this is really just good in like an aggro deck where you have a spot. Kind of like Short Sword. If you have a spot and you're attacking and you're sure you have a spot for this, go ahead and put it in. But I think it's like the D+ range. Up next is Scorch Rider. Scorch Rider is 3 and a red for a creature human warrior at common. It's a 4/3 with kicker 1 and a red. When Scorch Rider enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, it gains haste until end of turn. 4/3 for 4, sure, pretty filler. It's like a C. 4/3 haste for 4 red. That's expensive. If you have the mana for it, you're gonna do it. Like, why not? But that's kind of expensive. I think this is just a C-. This is, you need a creature, you need a playable, you don't have a cut, you need a warrior. Sure, there's better things to get. Up next is Shatterskull Charger. Shatterskull Charger is 1 red for a creature giant warrior at rare. It's a 4/3 with kicker 2. Trample, haste. If Shatterskull Charger was kicked, it enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counter on it. At the beginning of your end step, if Shatterskull Charger doesn't have a +1/+1 counter on it, return it to its owner's hand. So it's a 4/3 trample haste for 3. That's really good, but it comes back to your hand. That sounds a lot like Dash, which was fine. Like, I remember dashing creatures and they came back to my hand, and yeah, I had to cast them again next turn, but that didn't matter. And if I have that 2 mana kicking around, I just get a 5/4 trample haste that stays on board. I think this card's pretty good. I think this gets into the B- range. I don't think it goes any higher than a B-. But like, there's going to be turns where, oops, attack you for 5 with a 5/4 that you didn't think that I had. Yeah, it's Dash with many more words. So yeah, I think this is a B-. I think this is going to be really good. I think people might undervalue it a little bit. I think they'll look at the you have to return it thing and be like, oh, that's not good. But it does the thing you need to do. So I think I'm on a B- for Shatterskull Charger. Up next is Shatterskull Minotaur. We got another moose boy here. Shatterskull Minotaur is 4 red for a creature Minotaur warrior at uncommon. It's a 5/4 with haste. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. 5/4 for 6. Do not want, even though it has haste. For 5, maybe, but probably not. The aggro deck that I want, the aggro deck that I'm playing haste creatures in, do I want my 5-drop to just be a 5/4 with haste? 4 mana, sure. 3 mana, yeah. 2 mana, yeah. I think this is like a C. I'm not stoked on this. I don't think it's that great. I think you must be getting those discounts. Which, alright, if you're red-white aggro, you're playing a lot of warriors because you're rewarded for it. So this is going to be 5 mana. You then might be playing clerics or wizards, but probably not any rogues. Yeah, I need this to be 4 mana to give this a C+, and I don't know that it's going to be 4 mana enough of the time. So I'm going to go with a C for Shatterskull Minotaur. Up next is Shatterskull Smashing. Shatterskull Smashing is X red for a sorcery at Mythic. Shatterskull Smashing deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, Shatterskull Smashing deals twice X damage divided as you choose among them instead. I'm going to need to read that again, but it's also a bolt land on the back. So it deals X damage divided as you choose among up to 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. Not players. Not players. But if you do put 6 or more in, it deals twice that damage, which, that doesn't matter, right? Like, there's very little in this set that I'm not going to kill with 6. So the fact that 6 becomes 12 doesn't really matter. That said, this card's amazing, right? This card is, or wait, 6 or more, twice X divided. It's divided. It's not Volcanic Salvo. Yeah, I still can't kill the 017 crab. That's true. That's true. Yeah, it is divided. This isn't deal that damage to 2. So I guess if you're doing 6, yeah. The doubling does count. Yeah, I mean, I'm discussing this as though there's anything to discuss here. This card's amazing. It's one of these lands, so you're going to play it 100% of the time. You're going to pick it 100% of the time. It's first pickable. It's removal. It's sorcery speed, which is one slight knock against it, and it still doesn't matter. It's an amazing card. This one, I think we can just give an A to. In fact, even an A+. Like, I don't think this one is outside of the realm of rating. It's just ludicrously good and as good as you think it is. Like, this one's not outside of the realm. This one's just an A+. A+ for Shatterskull Smashing. Up next is Sizzling Barrage. Sizzling Barrage is 1 in a red for an instant at common. Sizzling Barrage deals 4 damage to target creature that blocked this turn. You know what I'm missing? Efficient Good Burn, and I feel like we're almost through all the red cards. So this is still fine. You know, your opponent's going to block at some point, and you get to kill the thing, either before or after blocks. It's your choice. Yeah. So a blocking creature has blocked, so it's not valid, or it's not only valid post-combat, it is valid in combat. The second it blocks, it has blocked. It's still blocking, but it has blocked as well. Yeah, this is a good card. You'll play it, but I really wish that this was just like 4 damage instant speed to whatever I wanted. It can't kill an attacking creature, which does really suck, but you're red. Attack them instead. Yeah, this is not going to get into the B range, I don't think. I think due to those restrictions, we're going to have to keep this at like a C+. I think you'll still play the first one 100% of the time. And I think you might actually be pretty okay with the second one as well. But yeah, let's go C+ for Sizzling Barrage. Up next is Skyclave Geopede. Skyclave Geopede is 2 in a red for a creature insected on common. It's a 3/1 with trample, and it's got landfall whenever land ETBs. Skyclave Geopede gets +2/+2 until end of turn. This is another nice aggressive creature. If you are an aggressive red deck, planning on that landfall, you've got those Akum Hellhounds, Firehounds, whatever they were. If you have those, these are the follow-up. You've attacked in with them for 2 a few times. Now your 5/3 with trample shows up. Very good aggressive creature. It's in like the B- range. It's obviously not a bomb, but it's a very good card. B- for Skyclave Geopede. And it attacks well even if you don't have the landfall trigger, right? Up next is Sneaking Guide. Sneaking Guide is a single red mana for a creature goblin rogue at common. It's a 1/1. Pay 2 and tap it. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. It's Goblin Tunneler, but destroyed by having to pay 2 mana for it. This card's horrible. Actually horrible. Actual garbage. It is a rogue. It is a creature. You can put it in your deck if you're somehow desperate. I'm not going to give it an F, but I think it's a D. I don't want to play this card. I don't want to play it. I don't want to play it. We used to get this effect for free. You just tapped the creature. Paying 2? BS. BS. Up next, we've got Song Mad Treachery. Song Mad Treachery is 3 red for a sorcery at uncommon. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, gains haste until end of turn. Hey, it's active treason, treachery, blah, 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 threaten. It's also a land. So again, this is a card that is outside of the realm of rating. It's a card that you should play probably 100% of the time. You should probably pick it rather highly. You're frequently going to play it as a mountain, but then sometimes makes sense to play it as a treachery or a threaten. Not treachery. Why am I saying treachery? Threaten. It's a I just did it again. It's a threaten. It's an active treason. I'm trying to go to the threaten effect, and I just want to say active treason, but the old folks will yell at me for saying active treason. It's an active treason when you need it to be. This is outside of the realm of grades. It's very good. You should pick it quite highly. You should play it 100% of the time. It's a CO2, says Mobile Jamfran. Up next is Spikefield Hazard. Spikefield Hazard is a single red mana for an instant at uncommon. Spikefield Hazard deals 1 damage to any target. If a permanent dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. It's also a land, so it's outside of the realm of ratings as well. This one's pretty weak. But again, You play it as a mountain when you need the land. It goes into your land slot in the deck, so it's free. You're putting this card in your deck for free. It's not casting you a land slot. And then you have this card in your hand. You don't need that red mana. Your opponent has an X1. Your opponent's at 1 life. Something's up. There's the Spike Field Hazard. So this is another card that is just outside of the realm of grading. It's not an A, it's not a B, it's not a C, it's not a D, it's not an F. You should play it every single time that you have it. You should pick it relatively highly. It's I'm going to run out of interesting cards to grab here. It is a foil Archon of Falling Stars out of Goblin Burrows. That's the rating for this card. I really wish I had an actual way of rating those cards more, but it's hard to say that this card that is going to be relatively mediocre in the game that you're playing it in is a high pick that you should play 100% of the time. If you should always play something, doesn't that automatically make it an A or B? Nope. Up next is Spitfire Lagak. Spitfire Lagak is 3 and a red for a creature lizard at common. It's a 3/4 with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, Spitfire Lagak deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's a 4 mana 3/4, which is a pretty filler creature, and the fact that you can play a land and ping your opponent is going to be a nice little bit of value. You can get multiples of these. This is a nice little landfall payoff for like the red-green deck. I think these are going to stack pretty well. I think these are very playable cards. I think they're like a pretty solid C+. Obviously not a B range, but I don't think it's any lower than a C+. So yeah. Up next is Synchronized Spellcraft. Synchronized Spellcraft is 4 and a red for an instant at common. It deals 4 damage to target creature and X damage to that creature's controller, where X is the number of creatures in your party. So 5 mana, instant speed, 4 damage, and then perhaps plus some bonuses. I mean, 5 mana for 4 damage to kill something isn't necessarily the best, but we could play it if we need to. X damage to that creature's controller. So we're dealing like 1 or 2, maybe 3. Maybe 3. 5 mana, but instant speed. This feels like a card that you kind of have to play. It's pretty similar to Turn to Slag and whatnot, so it's going to be fine. You're just not going to want to load up on these, right? So it's probably a strong C+, probably not much higher than that. Up next is Teeter Peak Ambusher. Teeter Peak Ambusher is 1 and a red for a creature goblin warrior at common. It's a 1/3. Pay 2 and a red, Teeter Peak Ambusher gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So it's a 1/3 for 2. Those are okay, and it's got exceptionally expensive double fire breathing, which is okay. This is a C or C-. Like, this is a very filler card. You'll cut it when you can. Up next is Thundering Rebuke. Thundering Rebuke is 1 and a red for a sorcery at uncommon. Thundering Rebuke deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Yeah, here we go. We found it, right? We found our instant speed burn card. Yeah, 2 mana, 4 damage, kill a creature, kill most creatures. We'll pick it. We'll pick it pretty highly. It's sorcery speed, which sucks, but we'll play it. This is what we have to deal with. It is a B. I'll play every copy of this I can get my hand on. Up next is Thundering Sparkmage. Thundering Sparkmage is 3 and a red for a creature human wizard at uncommon. When Thundering Sparkmage enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is the number of creatures in your party. It's a 2/2. 2/2 for 4 that deals 1 damage to a creature when it comes to play. It's not something that I'm super stoked on, but we did see that there's a fairly large number of X1s, so perhaps it can get something. If you do have another non-wizard creature on the battlefield and it shocks something, it's pretty decent. Pretty decent. This is like, I don't know if it's reliable enough to get into the B range. It's a wizard, which is nice. It's obviously going to go in the wizard decks. This is probably just enough to get into the B- range, especially with the number of X1s we've seen, and the fact that it shouldn't be too hard for this to be a shock, you know, every now and then. So let's go B- for Thundering Sparkmage. Up next is Tuk Tuk Rubblefort. Tuk Tuk Rubblefort is 2 and a red for a creature wall at common. It's an 0/3 with Defender and Reach. Creatures you control have haste. Nope. I don't want this card. I don't want this card one bit. There's no land on the back of this one. I have to pay a card slot to play this card, and I don't want it. It's a 3-mana 0/3, which I don't want in my aggressive decks, and it gives creatures haste. That's somewhat of an overrated ability. People will go out of their way to play expensive enchantments to give creatures haste, and they're never good. This is an F. I never want to play this card. Like, ever, 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 ever. Never want to play it. F for Tuk Tuk Rubble Fort. It does have reach. Like, realistically, you could side this in against a flying deck, but there's got to be better options for you. I'm keeping this at an F for Tuk Tuk Rubble Fort. Up next is Valakut Awakening. Valakut Awakening is 2 and a red for an instant at rare. Put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards, +1. Also, it's a land. It's a tapped mountain. Yeah, so this is pretty good. Like, again, it's the same issue we've always had, where we're playing this 100% of the time. We're picking it pretty highly. It is 3 mana, instant speed, depending how late in the game it is, probably draw 1, maybe draw 2. 3 is getting a little bit excited about something you're probably not going to get. But that's all gravy. That's all gravy because this card is free. Put it in your deck. If it's early and you need a land, play the land. If you top deck it late, congrats, you didn't flood out. You get to draw cards instead. So this is a very good card. This one we probably can give a grade to. I think it's just like a strong B or even an A. But yeah, this is the thing, right? Like, I hate these cards. I hate these cards for the grade system. It just doesn't work. But pick it highly, put it in your deck, don't underrate them. Up next is Valakut Exploration. Valakut Exploration is 2 and a red for an enchantment at rare. It's got landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with Valakut Exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard. Then Valakut Exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. So, 3 mana, do nothing. And then starts to do things when you start playing your lands. So you exile the top card of your library and you get to play it if you can, if you want to. If you don't want to, you get to damage your opponent. This is really good, right? I'm pretty sure this is very, very, very good. It ever so slightly has that problem that I had with Furious Rise and whatnot, where you are paying to play this enchantment and you're not guaranteeing that you're always drawing a card. I do think, especially if you're playing a landfall set properly, which means you're playing 18 lands, 19 lands perhaps even. I've seen people saying 21, and I think that might be a little bit too clever for your own good. But of course you have all those other dual face lands and whatnot. So you are triggering this quite reliably. And then if you do play the card, cool, you drew a card, you got card advantage. And if you don't, you damage your opponent. The one probable downside here would be you don't get to play the lands off of this card because you had to play a land to get that land, which means you don't have a land drop available. And it also doesn't do any damage. That's actually probably going to be a little chunk of a downside that I think is going to keep this from being a B+. B+ was kind of where I was going to head. But I think we're going to drop this to like a B here. I'm very excited to play this. I'm very excited to see how it goes. But I'm going to start it at a B. If it's better than that, cool. If it's worse, sure. Up next, I think our final card is Wayward Guide Beast. I guess I'll actually have one more to go after this. Wayward Guide Beast is a single red mana. It's a creature beast at rare. It's a 2/2 trample haste. Whenever Wayward Guide Beast enters or deals combat damage to a player, return a land you control to its owner's hand. It's a 2/2 for 1 trample haste, sure. But when we hit our opponent, we have to bounce a land, which is going to keep us behind on mana, but let us trigger landfall more reliably. I don't think this is any good. I don't think this is any good at all. I think there's way too much cuteness that has to be done here. Like, I would love to be connecting with this and bouncing my lands on turn 7. Absolutely. How are you connecting with a 2/2 on turn 7? If you're connecting with a 2/2 on turn 7, you're winning the game anyways. Your opponent clearly has not shown up if you're regularly connecting with your 2/2 on turn 7. So I think this might just be an F. Let's start this at an F. I think you'll win way more games if you just never play this card. F for Wayward Guidebeast. Our last card for today that was not available at time of recording is Pyroclastic Hellion. Pyroclastic Hellion is 4 and a red for a creature. Hellion at common, it's a 4/5. When it enters the battlefield, you may return a land you control to its owner's hand. When you do, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. It's a 5 mana 4/5, which is kind of okay, relatively filler. Returning a land may be something that you want to do so that you can get additional landfall triggers, perhaps in the red-green landfall deck. And getting to shock your opponent when you do so is just upside there. And it's all a may, so if you desperately cannot afford to return that land, don't, and just have a vanilla 4/5. It's not a good card. It's not a card that I'm going to pick highly at all. I'm looking to probably wheel this card. It's like a C. It's a card that'll make your deck if you have a spot, and if you don't, cut it. It's fine. Just a C for Pyroclastic Hellion. So that's going to wrap it up for the red set review. Red's interesting. The burn is not the burn that I have become accustomed to in many sets. A lot of it's sorcery speed, a lot of it's conditional. We'll see what red is like. I'm curious, but then maybe you just open the big old fireball dragon and just win some games. Let me know what cards you agree with, disagree with, etc. in the comments down below. You can always find me over at Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook. If you do have any, if you want to go to patreon.com/ShamanaLeek, you can help out the channel that way. It would help out a ton. That is definitely one of the ways that make this channel keeps going. But of course, the easiest way to help out is like, share, subscribe. If you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, though, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all next time.